As I referenced at the beginning, Active Lincolnshire is a part of the One Network. You'll see here it's a collaboration of not-for-profit organisations seeking to increase the quality and quantity of physical activity, PE, play, community and school sport. What that means to you is that if you need any help, support, guidance, questions on anything to do with PE and school sports, so to do with the Sport Premium Good Practice, how to spend your funding, if you've got any questions, can see there the points there, the things that I'm able to support you with. What we can do is we can signpost you to partners of the One Network. The partners are the logos that you can see at the bottom of the screen. So if you have any queries, concerns, you need any support, guidance, any feedback, please get in contact with us. The contact details will be on the final slide of this presentation, and we're able to signpost you and help you in any way. I think that's it from me. So I'm delighted to introduce you to Jan Hickman, and she's here, as I said, to represent the Association for Physical Education, and she'll be leading the session for us today.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks very much, and good evening, everybody. Just a big thank you to you all after your day joining us. It's a great number, and without further ado, I'll kick off. But I'd really liked your interaction tonight. It just makes it so much better when people are asking questions and as we go along. So as Jess said, I enter it in the chat box, and I'll certainly try and answer them. These are the outcomes though. First of all, I'd like to do an update on COVID and the current questions at the Association for Physical Education, or from here on in, I'll say AfPE, that AfPE are being asked. And I don't know how many of you are members of AfPE. If you are, you'll know that you can type away or phone. There's a dedicated phone number to the health and safety team, and you can have your questions answered throughout your annual membership. There's 3 of us, and we aim to get back to you, very, very quickly with Q&A. But tonight, here I am, and I'll do my best to give you an update on COVID. But then the meaty part of this session is about an overview of the new Safe Practice publication that came out in August, and then lastly the Q&A, which I'll try and leave some time at the end. It depends on how we go throughout. So here we go. Since September, these are the frequently asked questions that the health and safety team at AfPE have been asked and still being asked. So the first one is about contact within lessons, but also contact. For instance, yesterday I answered a question on, can you play football at break times and lunch times? And that one, if you're in a bubble, and that one keeps being asked. And I understand it completely, but the situation is, if we are talking about social distancing and trying to minimize contact, then the physical education lesson should mirror what's going on in the rest of the day and vice versa. So that's the answer to the first one. Changing for PE, I've just been overcome by the numbers of schools that have managed to get a policy in place of young people arriving changed for physical education on days they're doing the subject, which is fantastic, and that would be a great legacy, wouldn't it? Because it saves us so much time. So for all of you out there, just to say the national picture, there are many schools that young people are coming in the kit. And of course, we're entering now into the autumn, then into winter, just hoping that if it's wet, because we're doing a lot of outdoor work at the moment, and rightly so, that there's a change of kit. And I say that because we have had some issues with parents asking us that question. Bare feet, can we work in bare feet for these areas of the curriculum? And of course we can. Then on to swimming. And I know we've got secondary colleagues out there, and you possibly aren't swimming at the moment, but for primary, I'm really hoping that you're working with your pool operators to enable young people to continue with their swimming programme. But again, we've had questions from schools saying the pool operators want the young people to arrive beach ready. Fair enough. that saves time with them getting into the water, but then they're being asked to go home with wet costumes on, and it's just a safe practice. So much of it is common sense, and common sense tells me for a young person to arrive home with a wet costume on just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So again, it's working, preparing with your pool providers. What are their expectations and what are your expectations? You're paying for the service, and just make sure that you are getting absolutely right for those young people. So the indoor PE, yep, people are saying, can we do that? We're outdoors at the moment and have been since September. The answer to that is, if you have the space, you're lucky enough to have it still, then please, use it with doors open, and if you can open windows, but just the message from the Department for Education is, the ventilation. And make it as good as it can be. And I know, every school, there's 26,000 schools in this country, and every school is different. So some of the answers to these questions, you'll go, that doesn't work for us. But, we are very creative professionals. We find a way. We believe passionately in this subject. And just thank you so much that you are doing your level best to make it happen for these young people. And lastly, before I hand over to you, what activities can we teach on the PE curriculum? And the answer to that is just try and keep it going as much as possible. And it might not look like it did before COVID. We might have to change some of the activities, for instance, full-on games. But it's not that we can't teach, for instance, basketball. It just might be in smaller groups and more skills-based. But Anne, I'm going to pass over to you, and I know from previous webinars that I've done, many people find this bit the best, when people just chip in and say what they're doing, not only if you want to. So if you'd like to unmute your microphone if you have a question, I'll take a pause at this moment and listen to you. Any questions? All very quiet. Anybody, any questions? Like to share what they're doing?
I think I've got a question about, if that's okay. Zoe Howarth here from Welton St Mary's.
Sorry, I missed that. Can you just say it again?
Zoe Howarth from Welton St Mary's.
Oh, good. Hello.
Hi. Hi. I was just thinking about like gymnastics, because obviously with the curriculum being Key Stage 1, it's gymnastics, games and dance is predominantly the areas that are taught. How do we go about with the equipment and things like that? At the minute we're in bubbles, which is fine, but do we need to wipe all the mats down and things like that? Is there any tips anybody's got for things that they're doing that's working well at the minute?
Would anyone like to come in there and tell us what they're doing at the moment? If you're teaching gymnastics.
Like lots of schools, we try to stay outside as much as we can. So
it's great to share. So if anyone is teaching gym and has got a system in place, please let us know. In answer to your question, yes, if you can sanitize the equipment, I know it's hard, but if you can do that, then that's what we're recommending in between.
Okay.
Yeah. But thanks for the question. Thank you very much. Come on, anybody else out there has any questions?
I can feedback from the chat box that there's a few of you who are saying, yeah, coming into school in PE kit is the way forward. So I think if that's can offer kind of feedback to everybody else in the group, that's perhaps something, if you're not doing it already. I don't know what you say, Jan, but that seems to be a very popular thing to be doing.
And what I found on a previous, thanks Jess, I found on a previous webinar was that there was a teacher really struggling to convince their senior managers to make this happen. And through the webinar, they were asking how many people, so it might be something, Jess, at the end you collate. So you put in a chat box now if you have got young people coming in kit, because it really gave this teacher the strength to go back and ask the governors and ask the senior managers, saying how many schools in their area were operating this practice. And I think she was very convincing. So we made it happen, which is good.
Jan, if I may add something from a previous webinar that I attended, a teacher who was struggling to get their SLT, their head teacher, to get on board with allowing children to come in their PE kits. She did manage to get children just to arrive in their trainers, which meant just getting outside or getting out far easier. Is that an option?
I know, and we have had a few teachers asking us, they're saying their head is saying come in their school uniform and do PE in their school uniform, which I have to say AfPE aren't recommending.
Right.
For lots of reasons, which you can imagine. And I think it's good for me at this point to say that at the end of the day, it's what your employer asks you to do, not AfPE. AfPE, are in an advisory capacity, but at the bottom line is your employer makes a decision. But what is helpful is, us as a community helping each other through this, navigating through it. And if you're the only school that you're being asked, young people, I just think, particularly some of these young people can just get put off subjects, and that's through wearing their uniform, and that's the last thing we want to happen.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Adam, do you want to ask your question? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask Jan a question regarding tag rugby?
Hi, yes, hello.
Hello, hi Adam.
Hi, yeah, well, I've been teaching tag rugby this first term, and I thought it would be a better idea when planning it to tag rather than obviously use a tag belt, because they'll be using obviously the hands with the tag belt, and I thought a tag would be better. But we have some things against that, maybe about no touching at all from people. So, what would you advise with that?
Yeah, I think just be able to put the tag down and they pick the tag up rather than them touching each other.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So that would be better, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Come on. You must have some. If you haven't, I'll carry on. We get into the book. How many of you have got the book, by the way? I'm not going to be referencing page numbers and things, because there'll be a large number of you that won't have the book. But if you have, it's helpful for me to know. So if you've got it there, you can just put in the chat box that you have. Should we carry on then, Jess? Should we get moving?
I think I'm just having a quick look through the chat box. I think just seems lots of people supportive and singing the praises of children coming in PE kits for all the reasons that we know. So I don't think there's any other questions in there. So yeah, Jan, if we carry on and perhaps.
Good. Fantastic, thanks. Let's go. Well, if you don't know about this document now, your senior leaders will, but it's also good for us as practitioners to know where is the source of information that is influencing your senior leaders. And this is the government document, Full Opening of Schools. Unfortunately, our section is called physical activity, not physical education. But it is the section that we read and we look at updates. And it is, well, at the very beginning of term, it was updated a lot. It's not quite as frequent now, but AfPE gets its source of information from here. So when we are putting our documents together, this is our one. And I think it's good practice for all of you as well to know where it comes from. But on we go. This is what I'm employed to deliver tonight. So this is the new book. 4 years of writing, it took us, and it's the 10th edition. And so every 4 years it's renewed. So please get rid of, if you've got the old one, just get rid of it now, because this has radically changed, and it's changed through case law. We are always informed when anything goes through the courts. We're aware of why it goes through and who, what the outcomes are, and whether we have to modify what's written in this book. But we also, this particular edition was written by the three of us, and we were absolutely just so keen to make sure it was a great resource for you, and one that we wanted the whole staff to be aware of and know how helpful it is. So without further ado, let's all hone in on this. Secondary colleagues as well. I know it's a primary, and some of my pictures are primary, just to inform you, but the principles are the same, the principles of safe practice. So why, let's not look at the negatives first of all, but why did I put this one up? What's good about it? What's happening in that photograph that you'd go, yep, there's some good practice happening there. And good practice is safe practice, right? So anyone like to chip in there? I'm going to say that having the climbing frame out is just such a wonderful thing to see in the primary schools, and I hope you've all got frames in your and they haven't been taken out, because for young people to climb and swing and hang upside down, it's the only subject on the curriculum where that's ever going to happen. But just what they can learn from the experiences, and in this particular school, they're not limiting how many are going on it. They're not worried that they've got to have. There's no limit on numbers. Those young people are working quite happily, harmoniously together. Just a couple of things. That mat draped across the box there, I bet some of our secondary colleagues in primaries are going, what's all that about? Because you can get padding now on those boxes, and it's much preferred. They're very old-fashioned mats that used to drape. The new ones, those blue ones in the far corner there, are probably what you've got in schools, and they won't fold over. So that would be deemed unsafe, that practice, because that piece of equipment is not being used for what it's deemed to be used for. But also there's some mixed footwear, and that would be deemed unsafe practice. We would much prefer bare feet in this context, where they can grip and feel the equipment. But anybody can see anything else that's perhaps a little bit doesn't look quite as safe as it should be? Anybody just put it in the chat box.
The little boy doing the crab on the horse is not quite safe.
Yeah, why is that?
There's no adult near him in case he falls off, and the mat's maybe either side.
Right, so, okay, thanks very much for that question, because that opens up a lot for me there. So we'll never place mats in case young people fall off. So shouldn't really be seeing that mat. Can everyone see it underneath the ladder at the back there? In case. We really try and keep the floor clear so that young people know that mats are placed for jumping and landing. So if you're ever unsure, where do I put mats? It's where young people are going to be going into the air and needing to absorb impact. So I wouldn't have any mats around there. I'm not too sure you need an adult there either, because the pupil in question is able to go into that crab position. The biggest worry is that on the descent of that could get wrapped up literally, but could that mat folded over the horse there could cause some problems. I mean, the hair being tied back on the girl on a nesting table, I can't see any jewellery, so that's good. But let's go on to the next one, because we could spend ages on that photo and look at these little buttons here. Little reception. I hope we've got some reception teachers, because this is where it all starts, and you've got the biggest job of all here, getting these young people to be able to shin up a rope, just so that when they get to secondary school they can do much more exciting work on ropes, and not be standing there going, I can't get up the ropes. I mean, I'd hope by the age of 7 every child could climb a rope. That would be a dream of mine, when their hips are smaller, they're lighter, and just in the same way as they start to ride a bike, they get the ropes out and off they go. And this teacher here is, I'm assuming, is teaching how to climb. Can anyone see any poor practice? Anything there they're worried about? I'm just a bit worried about the little boy in the corner, a little cue with his baggy tracksuit. Be careful with tracksuit jogging bottoms, in case they can slip and trip on those. Much better inside for their shorts. Okay, sports hall here, great venue to really extend learning, and I know we've got some school games organisers here tonight, and fantastic you getting young people to experience these arenas. But this is great practice, isn't it? Great differentiation from going across ladders to going across mini hurdles, then experiencing the real thing, and running back down a lane. All very good. I was just wondering, the teacher there standing with her back to some of the pupils, but I'm guessing she's just there for the slight second and then moving back out again. I'm not quite sure what she's got round her wrist, whether that's a lasso, I don't know. But good practice. Is anyone unhappy with that photo there? Good, the one running towards them there just dropped down. Okay, let's get on to the book. That was just a little warm up. Chapter 1, which you... Yeah,
sorry, Jan, can I just ask a quick question, just while we're just with those photos, just on behalf of Caroline, can we just clarify whether children in a bubble can share the same gymnastics apparatus?
Yeah, I think we had a question alluding to that earlier, didn't we, about the cleaning afterwards of that. But yes, but, definitely. I think what we're trying to do is make sure that some of the aspects of our curriculum don't close down in times like this, but we find a way in which we can make things happen. So, you know, washing the hands and sanitizing equipment when it's been used for the next group is really what we're about. We're finding ways.
So within the bubble, it's fine for them all to be touching the same apparatus. You just clean it down between bubbles. Is that right?
Yes, and then cleaning our hands as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's good. Thanks for the question, Caroline. Any other questions? It's just lovely to have your voices rather than mine. Okay, so that's the beginning of chapter 1, and this is the content of chapter 1. And I know we've got some head teachers with us tonight as well, and thanks for joining us, but this is the chapter for you, but it's also very important that we understand the law and our responsibilities. So I'm just going to quickly go through all of those headings there: negligence, competence, policies, etc. Does everyone know what this acronym stands for? Anybody like to put it in the chat box? But the whole of chapter 1 is unpicking this law, and it's the Health and Safety at Work Act. And we just look across the world. In the UK, we have some of the best health and safety, and you'll know this looking around your school, all the fire regs, all the signposts. You know, we've fantastic health and safety awareness because of that Health and Safety Act that was written in 1974. It's very, very clear, and our head teachers and ourselves will follow that, and I'll explain that in a minute. But you know, across the world, some crazy health and safety actions go on because they don't have the same laws that we have. I picked that one out because of the mask, very different to our masks that we're wearing at the moment. But let's look at what this really means, because it's important that we know about it. And it's important that we know who our employer is, because the first part of chapter 1 is, and for heads out there, the first 2 pages for you, if you read nothing else, that's the best part of the book for you. And we had the most fantastic solicitor who helped us write it in a non-legal jargon, and very, very clear and a great start to the book. Do you know who your employer is, whether you're in an academy or you're in a local authority school? It's important because they set down what legally we have to do. And there are 9 key areas of what we need to make sure we do in schools. The first one: how many of you take part in the safety inspection that happens on an annual basis? You might have continental services coming in, universal services, sports safe. These are in the main gymnastics contractors, and they're coming in to look at your equipment and to look to see if it's safe for the young people to work on. And some people say to me, Janet, you know, ours is set in half terms and summer holidays, so I can't take part. And as a result of tonight's webinar, if that happens to you, you know, I'd really ask your employer that you take part in it, and can it be set at a time when you can do it? Ideally, yes, early in the morning in a school day, but when you're on the premises. Because if you're not there, you're the one managing the subject, you know what's, let's say, I don't know, it's at the bottom of those nesting tables, for example, or the vaulting box, you know, if it's just not stable enough, you know these things. So go round with the contractor. You can then get that all sorted there and then, because sometimes they've even got some of the equipment in their vehicle, and sometimes they go away, they then send the and there's a huge delay when you can't use the equipment. The next one there is knowing and applying your employer's policy. Obviously, we have to do that. But do you know the other areas that you need to know as a teacher, member of staff, that you legally have to follow? And what we've done in this book, very neatly, is to put the nine legal obligations there. And the one that we talk a lot about in chapter 1 is the one that sits alongside participate in safety inspections, and it's the duty of care. Take reasonable care of the health and safety of yourself and of others, and obviously young people knowing that too, looking out after themselves and others. So it's a duty of care which I'm going to hone in on, but the others, when you read through, you'll think, of course that's what I do in my school. Going back to taking part in safety inspections, a good safe practice, what I heard the other day on a webinar, is somebody puts a note in the staff room or in a PE department, secondary PE department, for people just to add whether they have got any worries on health and safety, and they add it to the sheet so that it's an ongoing dialogue between colleagues as to, you know, if equipment's being taken out of action, for example. So when the safety inspection takes place, you've got all that information ready to go. Another section then, in section 1, is the area of negligence, of which we all worry about. And I've just shown this crazy example here, which clearly is negligent practice. Beautiful thing, aren't they? Trampettes, mainly in secondary schools. Primary schools, I wouldn't, if you've got one of these, I wouldn't advocate using one. Give it to your local secondary school, because they're pretty lethal if you don't know what you're doing with them. And sometimes I come across a primary school that's got one in the back of their cupboard, and it's obviously where a member of staff was on a gymnastics course becoming qualified, and was taught how to use it, and then left the school, and there it still was in the store cupboard. So those pieces of equipment and the crash mat for primary schools, please don't use in curriculum work. That's where you will get into difficulties when staff aren't sure how to use them. But here we go, this is a secondary context here, and clearly, you know, the young person vaulting is going into the wall is negligent behaviour. So careless conduct is another word, which injures somebody and the law deems liable. But how does, if it goes through the courts, how do we assess what constitutes negligence? And the way that that's done is through these 3 areas here. So first of all, is there a breach of the duty of care? That's one of the areas that's looked at. Is there harm that's been done, and was the damage caused foreseeable? And I'd just like to say at this point, the amount of accidents from physical education is so low. It is, for the amount of work going on nationally, we should be really proud that we are very good with health and safety. We've been well trained and we know what we're doing. It's very, very, very small. Most accidents happen when young people are tripping up on the playground, for example, but not in physical education. But there are cases, but that's very, very low. So let's look at a case. So who carries the can in this scenario? I'll pause while you read it. Okay. So who's at fault here? Who's going to carry the can for this one? Anyone put in the chat box? Jess, can you read out any that the people are putting in? Who do you think?
Yeah, poised and ready. I'm very interested.
Anyone like to go in and say what they think would be the outcome here? Who carries the can for this one? Is it the coach, the specialist coach?
Okay, we've got a both.
Okay. Anything else? I must just say, and I've put this one up deliberately here because last year, AfPE, this was one of the most frequently asked questions. So can a visiting sports coach, who's mainly a games player, deliver primary school gymnastics? And it caused great controversy, this one. So we worked with British Gymnastics, and we, at the AfPE's line, but again, it comes down to your employer, but AfPE's line is very much that the coach, if they are a games player, we would advise that they did a gymnastics qualification because of it's a high risk subject. In the same way, secondary is how you do your trampolining qualification. But in the answer to this one would be that the class teacher is going to carry the can for this. Because although they are working remotely, the sports coach, the class teacher is still carrying the duty of care. They can't, within a curriculum area, can't say to a visiting coach, here you are, here are my young people, I've got a job to do down the corridor. They are the ones that they would go to look at, you know, what was going on. Now, it doesn't mean to say that the class teacher would be negligent here if they came up with fantastic notes that looked at where the competence was measured of the sports coach, for example, and that they'd been observed, they'd been monitored, and they were superb. So you can work remotely, but just beware. That's why I put this one up, because quite often people think I've got a specialist coach, all is good, here are my young people, and off I hop. Here's an example of very good practice here, where a superb sports coach knows what they're doing, specialist in the area of tennis, for example, and you've got the class teacher in the background who knows the behaviour of the young people, is making assessments of them, and just has that extra pair of eyes in physical education. But here are a few questions for you now. I'm trying to warm you up, and you see, where does the duty of care sit in these three scenarios, because they're different.
And can I just interrupt you just very quickly? Just got a couple of questions which I'd just like to interject with, just from our chat room, if that's okay, just before we go on to these ones, which is, what if the coach is covering PPA? I know I could answer this one, but I'll let you answer that.
It's exactly the same. That's why I put that up, Jess, you know, because for that, you know, that's exactly why that question's gone up, because I think there is this idea that we get the coach covering PPA, which hopefully it's not AfPE premium money, because that was never what the PE money was for. It was to upskill teachers, but that's not what this webinar is about. But yeah.
we could go on to that, couldn't we? And then another question from Julie, is this the same for hosting trainee teachers?
Yep, absolutely. So absolutely right.
So,
Always
so
same thing. You can't. And again, we had a NQT got caught short on the in a gymnasium, in a trampolining incident. It was where the head of PE wasn't around, and yeah. You know, you don't have to be there all the time. You've just got to really be very, very sure of the competence of that person, and also the, you know, the amount of you know, your note taking has to be ultra spot on. You know, the scheme of work, everything. Just make sure your documentation's in place. Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Jill.
Sorry, Jess, is there anything else?
That's it. No, that's it for now. Thank you very much.
Good. So what about number one then? Schools providing a weekend club, and it's open, by the way, to students, you know, from local schools, and those not on, you know, they're not on the school roll, but also obviously young people who are at the school. Who's got carrying the duty of care there? Anyone like to chip in, like to write it up on the chat box. Don't worry if you don't, because I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure I get to the end of this webinar. So the answer to that question is the school. The school carries the can. A school would be the liable one should an accident happen there. But the next one, the Scouts, and the key word in that question is the word hire. So there would be a hire agreement set up between the Scouts and the school, or whoever the third party is, a football club or gymnastics club. They have a hire agreement that's signed by both parties. And in that situation, because a contract is set up, the duty of care is then passed across. But the last one is an interesting one, and it has caused some consternation on this webinar series. And this is a school that takes their young people to the local pool, passes the young people across to the instructors who are eagerly waiting to teach them to swim. So who holds the duty of care? Is it instructors, because they're specialists, they're being paid to teach the young people, or is it the teacher? Come on, put it in the chat box. Anybody there, Jess? It doesn't matter, just to get people thinking a bit. No, okay, it's the school. All right, the school still holds the duty of care. So don't think we've got these beautiful swimming instructors that know what they're doing. They're the ones that are going to carry the can. They're not. I really advise, I know it's mainly primary folk here, but primary subject leaders, if you haven't visited your pool and looked at the quality of instruction, please do. Please go and have a look and make sure you are happy with what you see. Don't assume, because they are swimming instructors, that it's great swimming teaching. In the same way as maths and English is monitored to death, and sometimes there's a hidden garden with swimming, but not anymore. Please get down to the pool and have a look what's going on. And look at the competence of what do you see, and how do you assess competence? So secondary colleagues here are 4, and this is all in the book, all listed out for you in the competence section. 4 areas: the health safety executive, the HSE, they give it to us so that it's very black and white. You hold a relevant qualification. And secondary colleagues there, I had a question about do secondary colleagues need a fitness qualification when you are teaching in a multi-gym? Do you need a separate qualification? And the answer is no, you don't. If you have a specialist teaching, you would physical education qualification, that would be deemed enough to be in a multi. Obviously, if you've got a student teacher going in there or an NQT using weights, and they don't feel confident because they haven't been trained, then that third bullet point is everything, and make sure people receive the appropriate training. And the same ways, primary colleagues, if you've got teachers going on really feel unsafe teaching gymnastics, then CPD, use your premium funding, why we've got it, how long are we going to have it for, is a very big question, isn't it, in the light of what's going on at the moment in this country. But here's in the book, what we've tried to do in this 10th edition, and I know it's very small print, and please forgive me, but I just wanted to show you some examples of lots of pro formas that you can just cut and paste and copy. I think when we started off on the book, the 3 of us, we said let's make a book that is the greatest support to physical educationalists, that saves them time. Being a head of PE myself, I just would have loved to have had some of the stuff that's in this book when I was starting out. My favourite slide, and we come on to now the section in chapter 1 on risk management. So we've done competence, we've done negligence, the duty of the employer and the employee. Now it's the section that many of us, we've done risk assessments to death as well, haven't we? But it has to be in this book, and it's in this section, chapter 1. And I love that sentence at the bottom. Events to be as safe as necessary, not as safe as possible. And that for me is the best ever, because we have to get young people experiencing a challenge, and not in this next slide, I'll just show you there, this. We can't resort to this, where we wrap children up in cotton wool that they don't do anything. So that's at the left side of that slide. You know, in fact, dare I say, we're not doing physical education today because you've been too noisy. So physical education gets knocked off schools, but in primary sometimes the teacher's not very confident. Sometimes can you think, oh, it's just I can't do it, I've got too much to do, and you know, they're worried. And so please, if you've got staff that really don't like the subject, let's use this money, get them trained so they feel confident, so we get young people acquiring the skills that they need, the knowledge and understanding. They get to secondary and they can do the most exciting things, because that's where we've got our specialists now who can take them on to higher ground and higher risk. So where does physical education sit along this continuum? It doesn't sit right at the end, and I'm not sure many of you looking at your age will remember, but when I was at school, we played a game called Pirates in the gym, and I used to clamber around all this equipment, and I couldn't touch the floor because I'd be out, but we had catchers chasing us around the equipment, and it was highly dangerous. I don't remember anyone getting hurt, but I guess they did, but it's banned now. It's banned in the same way as the British Bulldog is, and a few other examples. But physical education sits where you see the challenge versus risk, the best practice. Yeah, let's get them shilling up those war bars. That's why I showed that that slide. Really, and move away from that. And if we remove all risks, if we don't get young people experiencing this in a managed way, clearly, then we're going to have more sedentary lives. But sometimes, don't we, with risk assessments, we just get so bogged down with what might happen, don't we? But believe you me, I mean, here's a classic example of a swimming pool that put in magic eyes, saved lives as a result. So it is worth it. All those assessments we do is worth it. I'm asked, I think the question may come up, but I'm going to hit it now. Do we have to do a risk assessment for everything, for every game, basketball, football, hockey? No, we don't. And we don't. And it's in the book. You do a general risk assessment for games rather than one for each. I'm sure I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But 3 types of risk assessment, and COVID times we are doing a dynamic risk assessment. It's changing all the time, isn't it? But in the book, I think I've got some examples here. Yes, that's only a part of the front page, but at the end of this, Jess, I can send you the latest AfPE example risk assessment for COVID. Yeah, we've changed it twice since September. But have you seen it, Jess?
I don't think I have, Jess. So no, that would be fantastic. And if you were happy for me to share that with...
Yeah, and by all means, cut and paste it, because again, every school's different, but we've tried to really help by writing one. But it needs to be obviously reviewed, and we've been reviewing it very regularly. But let's move on. And in the book, again, don't worry about if you can't read the text there, but in the book are example risk assessments that you can then pick out the bits that you think, yeah, that's we need that in our one. You can match your existing ones to the AfPE. Here's an example facility risk assessment, for example. Okay. Right, we're moving swiftly on through chapter 1, getting to the end of chapter 1 now, writing a PE policy. All of you will have policies. Sometimes they're embedded within the general school health and safety policy, and sometimes there's a separate one. And in the first time ever in the Safe Practice book, there is a sample PE policy. So it's 6 pages. that we've put in. Again, you know, you can match, if you're doing a review of your physical education policy, you can then match what you've got with what's written in the book and add or amend accordingly. So hope you enjoy reading that. Let's move on to chapter 2, because this chapter is probably for subject leaders out there, the one, and there's the headings there. I'd just like to take a pause. Can you just have a flick down the list there and see if any jump out at you that you think that's really need to look at that one? I can't go through them all now, but just to say that I want you just to know that there's a section on each. There are pro formas dotted throughout that. And let's just have a look at some of the highlights of chapter 2. The section on send has been updated and is, well, I just think you've got all your staff, for example, in a secondary department, that you have special needs, you just look at what AfPE has there on all send. People have found incredibly useful. And primaries too. Primary subject leaders, what I'd recommend doing is to perhaps at the end of a staff meeting or beginning of it, whenever, but hold up the book, let everyone know where it's positioned in the school and really what the content of chapter 2 is. And I'd even get staff to sign that they know where it is, so that if it will probably save you many questions throughout, because they can, if they're worried about jewellery, for example, they go to your policy first, I guess. But if they want to just check out in what AfPE says as well, they'll know where to go. But there you are, you've got the MAT section, that 4th bullet point down. Section 9, that's a very well-used section where MATs are. You might want to lift what's written in the AfPE book, put into your PE policy, because for new staff coming in, sometimes, you know, where people have had very little training, they don't know. So if your policy has picked out parts of this book, I think that'd be a great policy. But for our secondary colleagues, PPE, when you do wear it, when you don't wear it, etc. Okay. So I've mentioned this one about the sports coach and teaching gymnastics, but there's a very clear statement that we've written around this now, because it was a very grey area. So that's a new part of the book. You can't read that, don't worry, there's a special needs there. You can see asthma, autism. You can just see how much content there is for each special needs. Whoops. Right, moving on. Again, the book isn't just for us physical educationalists. Please let your welfare know it exists, your safeguarding officer, because there's a section on, you would have seen on that list there, section on safeguarding. Let your colleagues know all what's within the book. I'm going to just leave that for the minute, Jess, and I'm just watching the time, moving on a little bit. For our school games organisers, some good pro formas there on pre-event, the event itself, post-event. And then the Daily Mile, very common in primary schools, that lots of you are hopefully getting them outdoors and running and keeping fit. But there's a section on the Daily Mile and the footwear for the Daily Mile. And now chapter 3. This is a brand new chapter. It's been completely rewritten. Great for primary, also for secondary colleagues. Have a look down there. There's stuff in there that you may not have seen before, but learning about back care, for example, is where I'm just going to go to now. And you know, looking after your back and teaching posture, using the legs to lift, etc. is there. There's a whole section on water safety that you can do actually within the class. Don't leave it to the instructors to hope they do it, but you know, there's learning objectives and there's tasks and learning outcomes as well. And here's a section on jumping and landing and absorbing impact, minimizing the risks. So there's tons of content in chapter 3, which is all about teaching safety. So chapter 2 is teaching safely, and chapter 3 is teaching safety. And what I'd recommend with chapter 3 is when you come to look at your schemes of work and you're reviewing them, maybe just flick open chapter 3 and pick out any objectives there's about 90 objectives within that chapter that you could pick out and put into your scheme of work. Because if we can get some safe practice objectives really pushed right the way through our schemes, then they're going to be fantastic schemes of work that aren't just about teaching skills and knowledge about help warming up, cooling down, etc. But the bits you saw there, some of the psychological aspects of safe practice and back care and all the rest of it. Right, chapter 4 then. Jess, I can't believe where the time's gone. But this is the last chapter, and actually it's great because we've got some questions in it. The frequently asked questions from you, colleagues, over the last 4 years are put into this chapter. And I know when I used to have this book as a physical education, I used to go straight to the frequently asked questions and look what was there. But also case law. And here's a bit of case law. And you may have had this in your school where you've had a very clear policy on no jewellery. Student comes to school and says, I can't take it off, it's part of my religion. And the school were adamant that they had to take the jewellery off, and it went to court, and the school won because health and safety trumps religion. I think that's why I picked this one out, because it does come up quite a lot. And just be very assured that if it's within your policy, then the parents, students adhere to that. That's what you stand for. That's the importance of having very clearly written policies that are articulated to parents know what's written. So the case law is written in that format, so I won't go through anymore. But the frequently asked questions that are also within the book, and here's one here. This was one asked over the last 4 years, quite a lot actually, about transgender, taking part in sports days, taking part in physical education. So the question is poised, and then the answer is written in a text that you could share with your department. I mean, sometimes I've known subject leaders to ask questions to staff and then get staff to try and answer them, and then you give out the answer. And there are about 27 questions in the book. So, Jess, I'm coming to the end here. There are my course outcomes here. I'm hoping that you've developed your understanding at least of the structure of the book and the 4 chapters. And also the importance of having clear policies and procedures yourselves. But are there any questions and answers while I'm just rounding off here? Put in a chat box for Jess. But if we teach safely, all of the chapter 2 there, we've got all of that going on, and we're teaching safety within our schemes of work. We've got great teaching going on. We've also got effective learning going on, and great practice is safe practice. So keep doing what you're doing, keep doing a good job, and you're going to be fine. Here's the book, that's where you get it from, that's my final slide. Jess, any questions?
Thanks, Jan. That has been really informative. Thank you. I have got a couple of questions which came up sort of just while you were speaking just now, so they might not necessarily correlate with what you were just speaking about. But one that's come up is how would you recommend that the cleaning of soft materials, so such as bean bags, tennis balls, how would you recommend that that is conducted?
Yeah, I know, and that is the. I think first of all, do you have to use that equipment? That's the first one. You know, can you adapt your equipment so that doesn't happen? But because if we're going to make bean bags all soggy, they're going to be useless anyway, aren't they? So you know, we can't do that. And I think that's it. I think in times such as that we might not be able to use the equipment that we've always used. What else is there? And can I just say, Jess, at this juncture, because I guess that's the primary teacher asking that question, is that I didn't allude to the amount of money that we're getting in from the government. I mean, some averagely in 15 to 20,000. Do you know, if I was a subject leader right now, I would write a shopping list where I got the best equipment into my school, and I got a lot of it to put away for future times, because I'm not sure we are going to have this money around. And the amount of the beautiful equipment we have for primary schools now, it's just come on leaps and bounds, and there are alternatives to bean bags. So I'd look and purchase that.
Thank you, Jan. I think I'd probably just add to that as well with regards to the funding, and Jan alluded to this earlier, that if there is any CPD, any training, and anything that you can access, or you want to access, or you want us to provide for you, Active Lincolnshire are here to support you. Your SGO, so every school you're linked to an SGO, we're here to support you. So if you have got some teachers who aren't feeling very confident, or whatever, want to upskill, reskill, we're here. And if you just drop me an email, that is what your primary premium is for. So you know, as Jan says, equipment, training, you use it now, and get the very best into your schools that you can. I'm just got a couple more questions for you. Basketball, should that be being taught at the moment?
Can basketball be taught? Yes.
Yeah, so should a school be doing basketball?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're going to adapt the game, condition the game. I think at the end of the day, it might not look like the full-size game, but you could still be practicing some of the skills and smaller sided games being played. Yes. Anything where you're minimizing contact.
I've got just one other question from the chat box, which did come in earlier. I missed it, I'm afraid. So it was regarding, I think, Andy, I think this was in the section where we were talking about competence and the staff members, and it's the question is experience a measure of competence? And is that sufficient?
Well, it's in the round, I think is the best way of doing it. It wouldn't be, it's not black or white, that one, because you'd look at it within the round of what the activity was. There are too many variables here to say, yes, it's just experience is enough. But as you saw,
can I come in there?
The Health and Safety Executive has 4 means of assessing competence. Having a qualification or an equivalent qualification, but experience was there as well. But it might not, it depends, Jess, on, you know, it might be gymnastics or trampolining being taught. It would be dangerous for me to say, yes, that's fine.
Okay, fairly confusing then, isn't it, that one?
Well, can you give me a bit
more? If it's in there as one of the 4 points in which you can assess competence, it's there in black and white clearly, and then now you're saying, but it's sort of not really.
Well, can you give me, you know, where the question's going? Give me a bit, and I'll be able to explain then more about it.
I'm just wondering, someone who's had a lot of experience in coaching and teaching PE and maybe sports outside of school as well as on a voluntary basis, comes to a school and is prepared to help with the school and run some lessons with a school. Is a school quite happy? Is that point saying that, yes, if a school deems them as having sufficient experience, then that's a measure of competence?
Yes, yep, And at the end of the day, it's your employer. Your employer is making that decision. I guess they'd come to you as well. Hopefully they would, as a specialist. But if you'd be observing them, wouldn't you? And looking at their previous experience. And if you decided they are spot on, they're coaching outside of school, you gave me more information there on which to make a judgment. Yes, then that would be. I couldn't say it. That it was going to be for sure, because you could come around and say, well, they're teaching gymnastics or trampolining, higher risk activities, where I wouldn't deem experience would be enough.
Okay, that helps. Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have any questions? Either pop them into the chat box or unmute yourself. I'm aware that we are over time now, so speak now. Or Jan, if you just go on to it should be the last slide. Should have some. So you can just see here on the screen just some. Just 1 second. So there's an email address there, so schools@activelincolnshire.com. So if there's anything that you want to ask, as I said before, any questions, anything that comes to you this evening and that you wanted to ask, say any other CPD requests, this is one of 5 webinars this week. We've chosen these topics because we think this is the most kind of relevant to you guys at the time, but if there's anything else, do drop us a line and we will endeavour to put something on for you. There's resources and information on the Active Lincolnshire website, there's a couple of links there. I think that's just bear with me, just seeing if there's another. I think it's just another question. Just hang on a second. I'm just going to get these up. Mamraj, I'm not sure we can answer that one, which is interesting to hear that the PE premium money may not be there. Are there other initiatives coming in to aid health and physical activity in young children, or would NGB lobby the government quite strongly in regards to this? I mean, we don't know. I mean, in answer to that question, we really don't know what's going to happen to that money, but what we do know is how much money is being spent at the moment. So I would just hope that the money that you are having in schools is spent on the subject, it's ring-fenced, and it's for the benefit of the young people in this subject area. I think probably one last question. What's AfPE's view on school v school competitions at the moment?
In the guidance, what I'll do, Jess, afterwards, I'm just conscious of the time, is I'll send you the risk assessment, and I'll also send you the COVID questions that AfPE, and that's one of the questions, and I'll send you the question sheet with the answers on, yeah, we're not advocating school fixtures.
Okay, thanks, Jan. So I will circulate. Jan will give me the resources, and I will ensure that they're circulated out to you all. So unless anybody else has anything burning to ask, just like to say thank you very much, and thank you all for coming.